Okay, I'm ready for work and I thought I would take you out to my little studio. So the layout of our cottage is quite strange. We're upstairs now in our bedroom and I've got these kind of French doors here that lead, you can kind of see, out to my studio. So I can walk up my bedroom and I've got a little garden shed studio at the end of the garden, which honestly, when I moved in, I'd never had a studio before, but I'd always had a dream ever since I read about Roald Dahl having a little writing hut at the bottom of his garden. That was always just a dream that I was wishing and wishing and wishing for. So when we did move in here and we had a shed, I transformed it into a little studio. So I'll take you out there now. Okay, so let's head out to the studio. There has been a storm last night, which means that some of the banisters have fallen down, which is such a shame because, yeah, this decking is kind of falling apart. But I love it so much. It's pale blue, which matches perfectly my little studio door that you can see at the end there. So welcome to my studio. This really is my little nest and it looked so different before, honestly. It was just a grey, dirty, empty shell and I painted it all cream. So it's kind of now got this sort of cosy cocoon glow. I added in these lights from B&Q, which I feel like they make such a big difference as well. And I added the flooring, which is just kind of carpet tiles that I found on eBay. The artist drawers, these were another eBay find, which are just really useful for storing all my work, all my materials. I've got my shelves full of paints and pencils, and I've got my mural paints over here, although I'm pretty sure these will have frozen over because as much as I love my little studio space, in the winter she gets so cold. I don't have any insulation or heating in here, but I do have this lovely tin roof, and when it rains, the rain hammers down on the roof and it's just the coziest feeling. And my little bike, and this is my view from my desk looking out on the garden, and I honestly just feel so lucky to have this space. There's something so special about having a studio space, particularly I think that's separate from the house. I feel like there's just something lovely about being able to separate work from home life. So having home and the cottage as our cozy little sanctuary, but then this is my little work sanctuary that's just for me. I mean, behind the curtain you can kind of see that all Ted's shit is behind this curtain. That's my rule. I don't want anything cluttering up this little space, which is just for me and my work. I just had a thought that I should probably tell you a little bit more about my practice as an illustrator and how I work. So I think of myself as an illustrator artist, and it's very much two different strands to my practice that kind of meet in the middle and come together. And the illustration side of things, which is what I've been working on today, that is when I'm working for clients. I would say at the moment 90% of my work is book covers, which makes me very happy. But yeah, when you're working with clients, often they will come back to you with many changes, and that is why I work digitally for that side of illustration, because when you're working on something like an iPad, it is so much easier to make changes because you work in layers, so you can move things around, rub things out, delete things, change colours super easily, whereas artists working with physical materials like paint and things like that will know if someone says, oh, can you just change this? Can you change this colour? And you're kind of like, no, because it's just not that simple. You could risk ruining the original artwork. And yeah, that's why I work digitally for that side of my illustration. And then on the artist side of things, I'm in here in my studio working with paints, crayons, pastels, and I'm kind of just documenting my surroundings, documenting my life through my drawings. I tend to put on little exhibitions that are kind of chapters of different points in my life. So I had a Travels in My Van exhibition a few years ago, which is when we took 5 months travelling in our bright orange camper van Jaffa around Europe, who I'm sure you'll meet at some point. That was just before we moved to Devon. And I was kind of making work on the road, which was just an amazing experience. And then I had an exhibition when we moved here called Hermit, which was all about moving to the seaside, retreating into the home. And it had a lot of seascape paintings in it, a lot of interior illustrations from our cottage and from the studio. And yeah, sometimes my friends will ask, like, when's the next exhibition? But that's kind of the beauty, that I don't know what the next chapter of life is, so we'll just have to see when we get there. And it's so important for me, I think, creatively and for my soul, my heart, I think, to have the two different strands to the practice, because if I was just making work for other people, while it's such a privilege to do that and I really enjoy that side of my work, I like being able to be the boss in here and make my own decisions, not have to change things I don't want to change, continue to document my life in the way that I love through my drawings. So it's a really lovely balance, I think, to have the two working together, and that's how I work. I thought I would just show you a few of my artworks so you can kind of see the difference between when I'm working with things like paints and pastels compared with my illustration work. And I mean, my hope is that both of my styles, you can tell it's me and you can see the similarities between them. I try to make my digital work feel as hand-drawn as possible. So these are all original artworks. This one is kind of soft pastel with gouache, surfers in Devon, and this one's wax crayon pastel. That's our little kitchen. Again, these are all physical media. That's the poster that I made for the Appledore Book Festival. Again, I used oil stick and crayons and things like that. That is oil pastel on coloured paper. So yeah, and then you'll see on my book covers, let's go to book covers. It's really exciting seeing this part of my website filling up, because yeah, just a couple of years ago I didn't really have any book covers. This is the one my friend Liz spotted in the bookshop, which is really exciting. That's a YA book. And yeah, you can kind of see the difference. It's just the digital stuff is a bit kind of tighter, but I'm using kind of very similar bright bold colours. And that's a children's book that I did, kind of fantasy. That one had a really tight brief, so they're like, can she be falling from the sky? There'll be the earth above. She's falling into a fantasy land where there's a giant's footprint in the hill and castles and a dragon skeleton on the hill. So sometimes you get these crazy briefs and it can be difficult to kind of make an image that still works and, you know, has life and flow to it when the brief is so specific. But I was really happy with how this one turned out. That's a little interior design book I made last year. I mean, I say little, it has a lot of illustrations inside. There are 100 rules inside the book that are basically interior design rules that you can use in your own home, and I spent 600 hours illustrating this one, which is quite mad. I had a slight breakdown, but it was all worth it in the end. Yeah, that's a series. I've just done the 3rd book in the Agnes Sharp series, which I think that's my first series that I've illustrated. Got some Spanish books here. This was another really fun one, kind of designing Maud's granny flat and all the furniture that will go inside it, kind of going for like a vintage feel and picking out the wallpaper and stuff like that. I loved doing that. The Matchmaker's Cottage, which has a kind of cosy autumnal feel, and then Ancient History Between Us is kind of set on the Amalfi Coast, so I wanted to really saturate it with, I love this combination between sky blue and tangerine. You can often find the opposites on the colour wheel really make each other pop and sing, which is a nice tip. So another one would be like lemon and violet together, look really nice. Pink and green as well. There's that saying, pink and green should never be seen, but I totally disagree with that. There we go, pink and green. I think look lovely together. So yeah, that is my website. It's pretty much updated. There's a few things that aren't on there, but if you're interested in my work, that's probably a good place to go and have a look at it all together. I've got my solo exhibitions on there, bits about my workshops that I run, although I've taken a slight step back from workshops just for the moment because I have just so much book illustration work, which is amazing. So maybe I'll get back into workshops at some point, but for now that is on pause. So that is it. Thank you so much for visiting my studio and hearing a little bit about my work. If you enjoyed this video, it really makes all the difference if you could click subscribe, and I'll see you next time.